Hello, Doug, and welcome back to your duties, wanted or unwanted, in the realm of podcast editing. So, this one is called Intrusions. I think I've done podcasts on extractions. I know we have, but I don't think I've dedicated one to intrusions. And if I have, well, then I guess we'll just have to call this Intrusion Part 2. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as Intrusions and hope for the best because I think we're good on this one. So, without further ado and further chattery, here is your baseline for how noisy my space is. Well, hello, my constant listeners, and a very warm hello to my semi-constant listeners, and as always, a super warm welcome to my brand new set of ears. However you have found your way to your player, your Spotify, your whatever it is that you listen to us on, thank you for finding the time to hang with me and to listen to me and my mental meanderings on the word and the healing work of intrusions. Intrusions are, even that is an interesting word. We think of the connotation of the word intrude, to come upon, to enter into space uninvited. That is the connotation of the word intrude. But intrusions are everything, okay, because everything has power, everything has spirit. However, everything is absolutely neutral, but in the wrong place, anything can take on negative attributes. Think, for an instance, that an earthworm, when I walk outside on a rainy day, is a very welcome thing. So in its neutral environment, it inspires joy in me or cheering on for the health. If I am about to chew into a salad that I've harvested and not washed well, and I am about to chomp into an earthworm, it is not necessarily a positive experience, but it is one that makes me go, oh, ew, ew, ew. It's not like I haven't devoured a worm or two in my day or found a worm or two in my lettuce or my celery or any number of other things except for kale. Kale, I don't really understand, although I know it's really good for me. I've digressed. This is not about kale and the intrusion on my plate. This is about kale and the No. So, bear with me. Here we go. Positive and negatives. I think that many of us on this path already, whether you come from it from a shamanic perspective, you come from it from any other modality, it is not uncommon to be talked about or to be told to practice psychic hygiene or spiritual hygiene or mental hygiene. I kind of look at the psychic health or the spiritual hygiene as cleaning and clearing, much like housework. Now, I know some of you don't like doing housework, so maybe some of you don't like doing psychic hygiene. I am forced to do housework, so therefore, when I have a healing session, I know I'm also forced to cleanse and clear because I have to be as clear and clean a vessel as I can possibly be for when I welcome someone into my healing space. Now, what happens generally is that an energy can enter. It first enters into your sphere. Then there's generally an opening, or there's generally something within the aura body, in the energy body, that it looks to as an opening, and henceforth this energy, this thing, whatever you want to call it, then becomes an invader. And after it invades, then it, or if it doesn't invade, some of them even cluster around a person. So sometimes there's nothing actually inside the person, but in extracting intrusions, oftentimes they are conjugated or clustered around the areas of the body that likely feel the most pain or likely are the most uncomfortable. This is kind of how I see them. So something that enters your space, something that invades you, or something that clusters around you. Some of the spirits that we remove from the body actually have an appearance. There are times when I am doing soul work or spirit work or journeys on behalf of others, that what I will encounter is a spirit or an animal or something that is quite alluring. And I have sucked it into my stone, or I've decided that I'm going to work with it on behalf of the patient that is sitting there, only to find out before I've done much damage, if any damage at all, that actually what I brought in is an intrusion. And you have to learn that lesson. I don't think any book can particularly tell you what you're looking for. Some people will tell you that you're looking for insects. Well, I know people who have bees for their spirit kin or power animals. I know that wasp, who may look like an intrusion to others, to me is a brother. And wasp is a great helper for me in the physical world as well as in the spirit world. So what may be an intrusion to you may be a helper to me, or vice versa. So the appearance can really change. Some intrusions really are coming from ancestral trailings or leftover energy of an abuser. So what do I mean by that? How many times have you thought to yourself, I must be cursed. There's something in my family line. Someone has cursed my family line. And if it isn't a curse, could it be an energetic intrusion? Could it be the intrusion of a family who has a history of bad backs? And so we all know that we now have a skeletal weakness, or we have a muscular weakness in the back, and that is a perfect place for energy which requires pain to sustain itself to move right in, because we already have a pre-existing genetic condition, or we have a pre-existing condition. So I also kind of look at that. So what are the pre-existing conditions that a person will come with, and how can I work with that pre-existing condition to make things safer for whoever it is, right? So we have that aspect. So if it's leftover energy of an abuser, oftentimes if there's been a violation or an invasion, this is something that's called, coercion, also spiritual coercion. That energy can be left in the body. I have come across marks in the spirit world on a person's body where they have experienced physical trauma. I have certainly seen, as I've traveled along path lines for people, emotional intrusions, emotional trauma, and it lands up or manifests itself as an intrusion of the mind. So there's also that aspect of it as well. So if you ask yourself, how do intrusions happen? Well, that's actually pretty straightforward, because intrusions are opportunistic, and they look for opportunism everywhere they go. What do I mean by that? Well, anytime that we have this, I've just described that situation in the spirit world where I might invite something back, or you might be on your own journey and you might see something quite attractive or quite interesting, and you bring it back, and that may actually be a trick or a trap in the spirit world. I remind you again, the spirit world runs independent of us and not dependent on us. The spirit world also runs as an amoral experience and not an immoral experience. To apply human structures, human beliefs, and human sense of morality and fairness onto a spirit who has no concept of the human existence, I think it would be naive to believe that everything in the spirit world is operating for your highest good and your best intentions. I know that that is an often prayer, and I may have annoyed some of my listeners at this moment in time, but I think it's invaluable to remember that not everything is love and light. Not everything will have your best intentions at heart, etc., etc. There are aspects of the spirit world which do not apply itself to the mores of humanity. Indeed, I have encountered more than one spirit who has absolutely no use for the humankind or human reality. So it may be that you've been tricked and you brought something in. One of the ways that I have worked with the opportunism of certain spirits is I observe it. So I'll be doing a soul retrieval, and I have come across, this has happened not a whole lot of times, but a handful of times, I've come across what looks like a fragmented soul piece. And I see the fragmented soul piece, and it doesn't quite feel right. So over time and through practice, I have worked out a series of questions that I might ask a spirit. And one of the questions that I ask is, what is your intention on returning back? And sometimes they don't have an intention because they're young spirits or pre-verbal energy or pre-verbal client that you're working with. However, there are times when it is impossible for that spirit to necessarily lie to you, because what they want is entirely within their spiritual trajectory. So it doesn't have that immoral aspects, it's amoral. So it looks like the patient you're working with will come back to the patient you're working with, but what if the piece you're bringing back is absolute sorrow, or the shell of sorrow that no longer suits and is actually something that should be discarded in the spirit world. So there's that, right? So an unknown spirit. We've talked about the coercion, so the abuse or violation, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's emotional assault, physical assault, mental abuse. Those are true ways for an intrusion to come into the body or to come into where you are. And that could just be your energy field or come into the space that you're in. So sometimes you are in a space where there are lots of, one of the words I like to use is greeblies. So there's greeblies in the space, and they might rush up to me in hopes that they might enter into my body or cluster around me or bring me home. But they don't have that opportunity because I'm wearing my amulets. If I'm coming to clear a house, I will always have my basket of sacred objects, and all of them are imbued and blah, 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 blah. All the stories about how you protect yourself. So what are the symptoms? I kind of refer to it as a buildup if it's not cleansed properly. So people will talk about a weight on them, or something on one side or the other side of their body that influences them. Some of them talk about having another mind inside their mind, or thoughts that are not their thoughts. So I go about asking what it is that they're coming for and how they think that what the intrusion manifests of. And oftentimes it comes to pass that the person I'm speaking with says, this is going to sound absolutely crazy. So that gives me an indication that they know what they're dealing with is not of the normal, and they recognize that it is of the abnormal, and they're making an uneasy humor to demonstrate that they're conscious, they're cognizant, and their mental acuity is okay. And we're going to put in brackets, okay according to them, maybe not okay according to everyone, end bracket, right? Because we don't know. I don't know what it is. Oftentimes I will hear about a person feeling as though they're being watched. That comes across quite often. There are other things that may be left in the house. Lots of times people have talked about things on their bed, or they may come with them. I had a spirit who followed me in 3 moves that I made in the same city, and moved with me from apartment to apartment to apartment. And each apartment that it moved into, every time, the more we lived together, the more that it manifested, that it filled itself out and became solider and more solid, which is a whole other story and not really related to intrusions, but rather related to living with spirits around you. So one of the ways that, we talk about intrusions or that negative thought pattern, the thoughts that come and go. And if we have the ability to say, I know this sounds crazy, it just doesn't feel like myself, then although what they could be describing is a host of psychological conditions, I think that the first thing I need to do before I decide anything like that is remove as much of the physical causation as I can. And the extraction that I was taught to do through the foundation, I have I've changed quite a bit since that time. Since that, and when we took that workshop, it was you removed from the body that unnatural energy, that unsouled energy, and you throw it towards the nearest body of water. But what I saw was, as you were throwing it, when you throw a football, not a football, but a snowball or something along those lines, you can often have little bits and pieces of it dropping off before it gets to the destination, hence your sister or brother's, back of their head, or mom and dad's back of the head, whatever that destination was. So I saw it as being not necessarily a good method for me because I already spotted a flaw, and if I spot a flaw, then I'm going to expect a flaw, and if I expect a flaw, then Spirit goes, oh, wait, there's a flaw, we have a way out, because she doesn't believe in the full process. What I instead have done, because I work with fire, and because my journey work and my healing work started off in South on the medicine wheel, I use the fire as a way of cleansing my hands. So instead of working over top of the body, like I was taught through the workshop, I do more hands-on work. What that looks like is like a massage. And what I'm looking for are the physical causations, right? The various forms of physical causations. So one of the things, or many of the things that I found, I'll list off a few of them. I found knives in people's backs. I found swords in people's backs. I found words written on their head, written in their heart, written on their back. So those words that we say, that we hurl to one another, even, whatever you want to call them, those words land and they add weight to that person. Some people might be completely oblivious to the spiritual weight that they're hauling around, and some people are absolutely not oblivious to that. So I have found quite a bit of words, so it makes me very cautious with my words. I've also found actions, and I talked about that a little bit earlier, about seeing the traces of wounds or abuse still hidden or still on the body of the person that I'm working with. I find memories often tucked into cells. So as my hands move across the skin, my prayer is that the memories of the cell come into my hands. Now, when my hands feel full, I've separated my healing room into two different spaces. So one side of my healing bed has the flame, so I will wash my hands off in the flame, and the other side of the bed is generally the moat side. And in that moat, there are a number of spirits that have agreed to help me to take the goo and the goop off my hands. And they do so willingly because that goo and that goop is important for their sustenance. So they're like the sin eaters or the grim eaters of the world. That's how I see them. And they come in different forms depending on what it is that I'm releasing. And one of them, one set that comes to me, always brings a beautiful smile. So if a patient was to look at me, I've got this, I'm very serious, and my eyes are generally closed, and I'm moving through the body, and I'm using my hands, and I merge with my power animals. So if I'm using, if I merge with bear, then the bear claws are digging through your stomach or your chest. If it's Wolverine, then those deep, long, sharp claws are moving through your body. So as I scoop that through, I will have a very serious expression on my face, and then I bend over, and these just delightful, small, healing spirits come up and will clean off every finger and every part of my hand. And every time I see them, it is a big smile on my face. So if a person was watching me, they'd see me go from this, serious, let's get this stuff out of the body, to this gentle, warm smile of, I love you, thank you for taking this. It would be a bit of a dichotomy to see that, and it would almost feel like the antithesis of what was going on. This heavy, serious work followed by this warm smile of love and appreciation. I've reflected on that quite often, and I've never been called out for it, but I do reflect upon it. So those, in that regard, when I remove the memories or remove the goop or the various things that are on the body, I have different ways of cleansing my hands. I also know that I've used metal bowls in the past. I don't use ceramic or pottery, even though I love both of those, because of the pores and because things can cling to it. So here comes that superstitious cricket, right? Here comes that cricket that, doesn't want to throw it in the water because of a predisposed blah, blah, blah. I explained to you. So now we work with, now I work with the stainless steel, and I find it cleaner, and I also like the energy, to feel the energy of it. It seems to ring higher than other spiritual bowls that I've used. And I might have water in there, so wash my hands. Sometimes that has been recommended to me by my spirits. Sometimes I will just put it in there, clean off my hands, and then cover the metal bowl with a cloth. And then I will immediately take it outside with me or do something with it so that I release it to where it needs to go. The same as if I have an offering to the spirits for something to eat, whether, whatever they call for. As soon as that ceremony is over, I gather up the food and I take it to the place in nature that has agreed to accept the food that I've used in my extraction work. Extractions can be very light things, and it doesn't always take much for your patient to feel uplifted and changed. It really doesn't. Some of the tools that I use is obviously my smudge. I smudge the person, I smudge the room, and that just helps to get the debris off, the beginning debris. So that first layer, it's like taking a light broom to something. My feather fans or my fan, I have a different fan for clearing houses of intrusions. They are all very important, sometimes even using my feather fan to hit the person that I'm working with, just as a means of breaking that exoskeleton, breaking that intrusion up so that it is less stuck to the body, or I'm shaking the roots, or I'm shaking the claws or the talons, that it is used to stick to the person or stick into the person. And those are some of the tools. So the feather is like be hitting down on that person, and then I'll use the feather fan as a way of sweeping. So sweeping everything off. I also like to use the tip of the feather fan if I'm smudging prior to extraction to take the smoke and the feathers over top of the eye so that I gently touch the eyelids. So we need to get the conscious mind, and I also need to get those intrusions out of the eyes to bring clarity to the actual event and the process. And I will often use my smudge and clear the hair and the mind to kind of take off some of the pre-existing thoughts or disbelief that they have in the healing process. So there's that process too of spiritually cleaning the body, the eyes, the mind, the spirit, of just parts that are sticking to us that we don't need, or judgments that we certainly don't need. There are also tools that the spirit has shown me to use. So the merging of the power animals, and depending on what I'm doing, there will be different power animals brought in to bring out the deeper aspects of the intrusions. How you see an intrusion and how I see an intrusion may be very different things. When I took Reiki all those many years ago, I was taught that if there was something in the body, that my hand would shake or my hand would twitch. There are other ways of finding it, hot spots or cold spots on the body. I still find that very accurate. Intrusions, I also look at when a person is laying down on the healing table. Even if they pulled the blanket up, I take a look at where are the creases in the blanket. I'll flip the blanket up and look at their feet and look at their legs, and depending on how they're splayed out or how they're open will tell me quite a bit about how they move in life. Is one hip out more than others? So do they move stiltingly? Can I remove an intrusion from the hip area? Again, we talked about having an issue passed down from family member to family member. So is there going to be more energy stuck in a place that is sore? So I have met more men with turned out feet than I've met women. And so that means one thing to me on a man, it means a different thing to me on a woman. I also use my pendulum. My pendulum is a very good indication as to which of the chakras are talking to each other and which ones are not, which ones are blocked, which ones are moving in an elliptical fashion or off the body. So there's lots of ways of reading the energy, and in reading the energy, it brings us to that place of what is natural and what is unnatural, what is expected and what is unexpected, what is neutral, what is positive, and what is negative. Those are all aspects of it. It's important to understand that in doing so, we have created now a relationship between yourself and with your patient, and you've also created a relationship with the energy that you're extracting, or that intrusion that you're removing. So you've created a relationship with it. And one of the ways that I create a relationship with it is I tend to try to make it curious. I know I've talked about previous podcasts about singing to the body, whistling over the body, drumming over the body, rattling over the body, using my click stones over the body. Those are all ways of attracting the attention of the intrusion. And so I'll work on one part of the body, one side of the body. So let's say I'm working into unconscious patterns. So I would be working my hands in removing the intrusions of those unwanted patterns out of the belly. But I can only go so deep. And what I notice then is that the intrusions look different to me, but now they have pushed themselves up against the spine and up against the important structures at the low back or in the back. And in order to get to the root of things, then I flip my patient over and we'll go to the back. And in the back is where, there's a lot more scraping and moving of the energy and the removal of the memories so that I can get the roots of things out. So I pull from the base of the spine and I pull it all the way up, and if I remove it from the neck, and sometimes pull it all the way over the head, and including pulling some of the thoughts out of the mind, which is I find interesting as well. Intrusions can come in the form of physical ailments, can come in the form of a neck muscle that never is relenting, can come in the form of the smell of a body, can come in the form of aggressiveness, can come in the form of addiction, but that's kind of different. But certainly there is a lot of muck left behind on a person who suffers from the disease of addiction. And this is where we have part of the abuse and part of coercion. It takes quite a bit of energy for not every addict, but for most addictions to come to the forefront. So the spirits are using coercion. Oh, just one more bite. Oh, just one more drag. Oh, just one more drink. Oh, just one more, just one more, just one more. Because you're involving yourself in whatever action makes it alive or living is very important, for the very simple reason that that's how it feeds. That's a part of the intrusion's necessity for light, for energy, for movement. Extractions are also a great way of starting soul retrieval. We talked about it, removing the intrusions as a way of cleaning the body, so that when we bring the soul pieces home, then it is a cleaner place to end up. It is a cleaner place to be in. Another aspect of intrusions is that it's important, as a person who may do work on intrusions or with intrusions, to keep your own space open and clear. So if you have your stones, if you want to leave them out under one moon or the other moon, then you do that. Smudging your house is very good. Finding generator stones or generator waters in order to cleanse and clear. Candles being burnt are ways of cleansing and clearing the space. Another aspect of removing intrusions is also doing the journey work. The journey work, especially for distance, is obviously much easier than flying from Dallas, Texas to Edmonton, Alberta. So in order to do this work, it would be a set time where one would journey for the other person. And in the spirit world, your own spirits, the ones who have helped you with extraction work or helped you in identifying and working with intrusions, are there for you. There are other times when your power animals, your spirit kin, they take the energy of the intrusion and they work with the energy of the intrusion, for the very simple reason that they don't want your life force or your life energy stuck to it either. The benefit of doing it in the spirit world also gives me another idea of how it got there. So in doing it in the spirit world, I can find ways of tracking the beginning and how it actually occurred. And there are times when I've been able to find the patient that I'm working with in a healthy state prior to the intrusion coming into the body. So I may at that time also suck in that soul memory of healthy and whole. And once I'm done the spirit world work of intrusion, removing intrusions, if that person is in my room, I would come back and blow into the body the memory or the representation of a whole body and a healthy body prior to that intrusion coming in. When you're working with families and you're being asked to clear something, an intrusion that they feel is affecting their children or their household, take a look at all memories, all members of the same family, because there are often things which are very, they join the family together. They join everything together. So it is like a web. Here we go again. Everything has power. Everything has spirit. And if there is something in that particular house that is bringing everybody down, that's a perfect recipe for an intrusion to wreak havoc on an entire family or an entire space. So to keep those things in mind, it's important to keep those things in mind. The journey also, if you're journeying beforehand, which I did for many years, I would journey before for the different meeting different intrusions, and my spirits would give me ideas as to how to protect myself or what I might need as an offering to get the intrusion out of the body, out of the house, or away from the family. It could include anything from a food offering to a color offering to an element offering. So there are those ways of finding information and tools as well. If we have intrusions that are in a building, it's generally advisable to journey to the building and to speak to the spirits that live there and who are not intrusions but truly just live there, and ask them their advice and do a little digging and find some historical aspects. Intrusions aren't met with being this demonic sense of energy, because it really isn't. And to think of it that way, I think, is very reductive on one hand and kind of silly on the other hand. But that's just my thinking. I believe that we have the ability to affect change psychologically, physically, emotionally, and spiritually by removing intrusions. I believe that the positive effects can last for a very long period of time. I believe in giving the people in my life tools to help keep themselves clean, whether that's ways in the shower to just do a daily cleanse, to using, if the person is more adventurous, to using the pendulum as a way of clearing the body or the house, to using, teaching them how to make their own smudge or where to buy the rolls of sage or sweetgrass, braids of sweetgrass for them. There are various ways and takeaways for people in order to bring this practice into their life, recognize the energy that is around them, and how do they work with that energy in a way that is healthy and positive for the best outcome. And recognizing that sometimes you can't do something on your own and you need a little assistance. And there's no harm in asking for assistance. You have a different eye than I have. You have a different way of looking than I have a way of looking. We all come at this from different angles. We all come at this through the veil over our eyes that is put there by the space and the culture that we live in. We are influenced by our family. We are influenced by the preponderance of good and evil in this world, the this or that, the light or dark, the whole argument for duality, and hence that kind of clouds the relationship between the human and an intrusion, because we would tend to see them as a negative and not necessarily as a neutral. We may have a bit of a jump or a knee-jerk reaction if we think that we have something that is clustered around us or something that has invaded us. So it's important to watch your language around intrusions so that you inadvertently don't frighten yourself. It's important to utilize and to remember that the spirits that are around you are willing to help you in the spirit world to identify intrusions, how to remove intrusions safely, how to keep your body safe, what are the sacred objects that you need to set up in order for this being to come out or this intrusion to come out. And there is a big difference between intrusions and extractions and compassionate depossessions. But I'm going to leave it there for now because I believe I have given a little bit of information for you. Intrusions are a part of life. They are a part of shamanic teaching. They are a part of hygienic practice. They cannot be avoided. But the more you live full, the more you live close and in tune with spirit, I find the less likely you are to be taken over or invaded by or affected by an intrusion. So in closing, I wish you good prayers. I wish you good medicine. I wish you a good way of living And may one foot walk in front of the other foot, and may the path that you choose to walk be truly the path that fills your soul. And if you can't fill your soul 100% of the time, because very rarely do we get to, may you find nourishment in whatever journey you're on and in whatever path you are. Until we meet again, me from this side of the microphone and you from that side of the speakers or earbuds, I hope you take good care of yourself, and I look forward to meeting you back in the space of Shaman's Way. Until next time.